Development provides an introduction to the subject of economics and focuses on the concept of economic development. The chapter covers the following key topics. Definition of development. This section defines the concept of economic development and explains the various economic indicators used to measure development, such as gross domestic product, GDP, Human Development Index, HDI, and others. The chapter defines development as a process of economic and social progress in which the living standards of people are improved and they are able to lead more fulfilling lives. Development is typically measured by various economic indicators, such as gross domestic product, GDP, Human Development Index, HDI, and others. GDP is a measure of a country's economic output and is used to measure the overall economic performance of a country. HDI, on the other hand, takes into account factors such as life expectancy, education, and income to provide a more comprehensive measure of human development. The definition of development in the chapter is further expanded to include the following key elements. Economic growth. Development is often measured by the growth of a country's economy, which is reflected in the increase in its GDP. Social development. Development also includes improvements in social conditions, such as health, education, and living standards, which contribute to the overall well-being of the people. Sustainability. Development must be sustainable, which means that it should not deplete the natural resources or harm the environment for future generations. Equity. Development must be equitable, which means that it should be inclusive and benefit all sections of society, regardless of their income, gender, or other factors. Characteristics of developing economies. This section discusses the various characteristics of developing economies, such as low levels of income, high levels of poverty, and limited access to resources. The characteristics of developing economies, which are those that are in the process of growth and development. Developing economies are typically characterized by low levels of income. Developing economies have lower levels of income compared to developed economies. This is reflected in lower per capita income, which is the average income per person in a given country. High levels of poverty. Developing economies often have high levels of poverty, with a large proportion of the population living below the poverty line. Limited access to resources. Developing economies often have limited access to resources, such as technology, infrastructure, and skilled labor, which can limit their ability to develop and grow. Agricultural dependence. Developing economies are often heavily dependent on agriculture, which is a low productivity sector with limited potential for growth and development. Lack of human capital. Developing economies often have low levels of human capital, which refers to the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the population. This can limit their ability to develop and grow. Unequal distribution of wealth. Developing economies often have an unequal distribution of wealth, with a small proportion of the population controlling a large share of the wealth. Poor infrastructure. Developing economies often have poor infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and buildings, which can limit their ability to attract investment and grow. Theories of economic development. This section introduces the students to various theories of economic development, such as modernization theory, dependency theory, and others, which aim to explain the process of economic growth and the factors that drive it. The two main theories of economic development are the classical and modern theories. Classical theory. The classical theory of economic development is based on the idea that economic growth is driven by increases in the amount of capital and labor in an economy. According to this theory, economic growth is a natural result of market forces and will occur automatically if the right conditions are present. Modern theory. The modern theory of economic development is based on the idea that economic growth is driven by investment in human capital, technology, and infrastructure. According to this theory, economic growth requires government intervention and investment in these areas in order to create the conditions necessary for growth. Factors contributing to economic development. This section covers the various factors that contribute to economic development, such as investment in education, technology, and infrastructure. Introduces the factors contributing to economic development, which are the conditions and elements that drive economic growth and improve the standard of living in a given country. The following are some of the key factors contributing to economic development. Capital formation. This refers to the creation of new capital in the form of investment in physical and human capital, such as infrastructure, technology, and education. Labor force. The availability of a well-educated and skilled labor force is an important factor in economic development. This includes a workforce that is productive and able to adapt to new technologies and changing economic conditions. Types of economies. This section provides an overview of the different types of economies, including traditional economies, market economies, and mixed economies. Introduces the different types of economies, which are classified based on the role of the government in the economy and the methods used for resource allocation. The following are the main types of economies. Traditional economy. A traditional economy is based on the customs and beliefs of a society, and the allocation of resources is determined by tradition rather than market forces. Command economy. A command economy is one in which the government controls the allocation of resources and the means of production. This type of economy is characterized by central planning and state ownership of the means of production.